Good afternoon, everybody. Um, Welcome to this cabinet meeting. Um, it's going to be webcast, so just remember that. No sudden gestures, and certainly no swearing. Um, can I bring to your attention housekeeping matters? There's no fire alarm testing today, so if the bell does go, then can you please follow the fire and emergency procedures to get out of here as quickly as you possibly can. I also would like you to use your microphone when addressing the meeting. That helps us in the room, but it also helps people on the webcast who are following us on the webcast. And when you're not using it, please switch it off. And can you make sure your mobile devices are turned to silent? Suddenly turns his mobile phone to silent. I need to ask if there are any apologies for today's meeting, please, Jamie.
Thank you, Leader. So there's apologies from Councillor Mark Lowry.
Okay, thank you. And the item that Councillor Lowry was going to be presenting, Councillor Penberthy has kindly offered to do it. I think you were offered to do it, didn't you? Anyway, Councillor Penberthy will be doing it. That's the main thing. And you at the moment are sitting in the place of the Chief Executive, who will be with us.
Yeah.
And also Councillor Sally Creswell will be with us, but they have a meeting at the moment with the Department for Education. So as soon as they finish with that meeting, they'll be joining us in a little while. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect of any items on the agenda today, please? No? Thank you very much. So I now move to item 3 on the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. That was held on the 14th of August. Can I sign them as a true record, please?
You may.
That's very kind of you all, thank you. Next item of business is item 4, which is questions from the public. This month we have one question from the public, and questions are just one of the many ways that we listen to and engage with the residents of Plymouth. Mr. Stephen Dart has asked this question. Is Mr. Stephen Dart with us today?
He's not in person today, Tudor.
What I'm going to do, though, is I will read out the question and then read out the answer to this question, if you wouldn't mind, because I think it's important that this information that Mr. Dart has asked about gets the widest possible circulation. So he's asking, Mr. Dart is asking, what checks and balances are in place to check that the £2.75 million council funding agreed by the Cabinet in March for the Brickfields redevelopment is spent on capital projects and not as revenue, e.g. on new players for Plymouth Argyle? It's a fair question, I suppose. Before I answer it, I think it's worth noting the progress that's already been made on this project over recent weeks. David and Sudan will know probably more than they need to know about or want to know about what's been going on over the last few weeks. But look, at the end of August, Plymouth Argyle Community Trust took over the management of the site ahead of the refurbishment works that they're due to complete on the existing sports centre over the coming months. And those works will be just the first step of a much wider £21 million investment in the Brickfields site. And that investment will not only transform Brickfields, it'll also transform opportunities for the Devonport community, for sport in the city, and also, of course, our professional sports clubs. Now, this project is a result of an amazing and long-term partnership between the Council, Plymouth Argyle, the Argyle Community Trust, Plymouth Albion, Devonport Community Leisure, and existing users of the site. So this deal is about massive investment in new facilities and making the most of the Brickfields site. It's clearly also a significant inward investment, in particular from Argyle, who are themselves investing £18 million across the club and community trust. But for me, This deal is about ambition for our communities. It is about better health outcomes for the people of Devonport, and it is about better access to facilities for our local residents. So the question we received from Mr. Dart asks what checks and balances are in place to check that the £2.75 million of council funding agreed by the Cabinet in March for the Brickfields redevelopment is spent on capital projects and not, as he said, revenue, e.g. new players. I can confirm to Mr. Dart that only around 20% of the funding approval will be paid as a grant funding to Plymouth Argyle anyway, and that all of this will support capital works such as new walkways through the site and improved public spaces. The council will of course be monitoring these works and will employ an external surveyor to ensure that all the grant funding claims are supported by evidence of works completed. I'd also like to add that we're ensuring that the site is protected for sports and community uses in perpetuity. And we have placed the community at the forefront of this governance, underpinned by a set of community promises and an ongoing role for ward councillors and Devonport Community Leisure Limited. And speaking of ward councillors, I would like to commend Mark Coker for his work in this space, who has represented his community extraordinarily powerfully over the last few months. So Mark, thank you for what you've done. So I'm now going to move on to Chair's urgent business. Now, I actually got this down for me to do, but I reckon I want to palm it off to Mary Aspinall. Would you do this for me? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. This is concerning the NHS dentistry, particularly the task force and what we've been doing, but it's some of the background as well. The problems of access to NHS dentistry in Plymouth are well known, long-standing, and have been the subject of discussion on numerous occasions, both within the City Council's scrutiny function and Health and Wellbeing Board. All age groups and populations are at risk of poor oral health, even though it is largely preventable. Oral health problems such as tooth decay, gum disease and mouth cancer are increasingly concentrated in vulnerable and socially disadvantaged groups. More deprived area with more transient populations are also associated with a lower proportion of access to NHS primary dental care. The lack of free or affordable dental care has huge impacts on people. Untreated tooth decay is very painful, making everyday tasks difficult to concentrate on and driving some people to DIY solutions, trying to repair or even extract their own teeth. Painful teeth lead to poorer diets, limiting to soft foods which will often lack healthy nutrients. Changes to appearance are also experienced by people as stigmatising, reducing their confidence, isolating them and affecting their self-esteem. And when the person impacted is a child, this can have lifelong impact. Over 600 children each year have to have teeth, often multiple teeth, extracted under general anaesthetic in Plymouth. An operation that is avoidable, and as well as that impact on children and their families, uses up resources at the hospital. Plymouth City Council has set up a cross-party, multi-agency dental task force to urgently address this issue. We have engaged with local NHS Devon, who have recently become the commissioners of NHS dental services, asking them to urgently take action to address the dental health needs of all Plymouth residents, and in particular those seeking NHS dental care through the waiting list. We know that there are over 20,000 on the waiting list for the NHS dental services in Plymouth. Even though this is a huge number, we have long suspected that this might be the tip of the iceberg. The NHS says that 50% of the population should be able to access NHS dentistry. However, through the Dental Task Force, we now know that in Plymouth, only 25% can. This means that 68,000 people who should be able to access NHS dentistry cannot currently do so. This also means that Plymouth residents are receiving only half of the resources that they should be for dental care, and somewhere between 7 million and 9 million of NHS funding that was set aside for providing this care in 2023 to 24 will not be spent in Plymouth based on the NHS Devon's current plans. This money, known as the clawback, must be invested in the dental health of Plymouth residents urgently. We therefore reiterate our ask of NHS Devon ICB urgently to take action to address the dental health needs of all Plymouth residents, specifically in relationship to the 21,729 residents currently, that was May's figures, on the NHS dental waiting list, but mindful there may be tens of thousands more who have not made this waiting list. This will be done by ensuring that the significant amount of the annual clawback of High Street NHS dental underspend is ring-fenced to spend on NHS dental provision in the city. And secondly, encouraging NHS Devon ICB to work with the council's dental task force to use the annual clawback to support alternative and innovative solutions to providing more NHS dental capacity in the city through the development of flexible commissioning models. And those two things are the things that we need to be writing to Sarah Wollaston, who chairs the ICB leader, and really pushing this, because it's 2023. We should not be having this lack of provision in our city.
Thanks very much indeed, Mary. When it comes to cabinet updates, I probably am going to ask you to do that again, but I think it's we'll come back to this. I got to say this. I mean, I think when you told us about this figure, well, I think we were all in a bit of a state of shock to hear just how much money is unspent in Plymouth because they can't find people to spend it on, not the patients, but the actual dentist. But for the government to say that we got to give the money back rather than keep it and use it to encourage more NHS dentists into the city is criminal in my view. It's just unbelievable that the government are insisting on clawback when actually what they should be doing is moving heaven and earth to get people into Plymouth to provide those dentistry services that people so desperately need.
Leader, we have the second of the dental task force meetings this coming Friday, so I'm hoping there has been some movement. In fact, I should be very perturbed, shall we say, if there hasn't been some movement in all of this. And certainly we need to keep fighting. And I think what upsets me most of all is that the oral health needs of the city of Plymouth was done back in 2019, and we've not moved forward from that. And in fact, if anything, the waiting list then was 9,800 and we're now to 21,000. That's not right.
So thank you, Mary. Jemima.
I wanted to add something. Obviously, the figures around the children is something that we've heard many times before, but it's still as shocking every time you hear it. But also, I'm hearing anecdotally around the lack of access for women who've recently given birth, who are entitled to NHS treatment for a certain amount of time after, postpartum, and they are not able to access that treatment to which they are entitled. And again, I know I have raised that with Councillor Aspinall, and the Dental Task Force will be talking about it, but I just thought it was worth adding that to the litany of people who are not able to access dental care to which they are entitled. Thank you.
And I think one thing that came out very clearly from our first meeting was the fact that the dental school and the emergency care that Live Well give, there was at least going to be able to be a dialogue so that that can be looked at and make sure that each of those functions are being looked at better and being able to treat more patients. So just that one meeting had a positive effect on that. So I'm really pleased, but we aren't happy yet.
Okay, well, we'll agree to do what we've just heard you ask for, and look forward to a further update from you in due course, hopefully with some news of progress. I still, can't get over quite how much money the government's insisted they claw back. I just find it just completely unbelievable. Anybody'd think we had government ministers in the city, wouldn't you? Still, they're on it, aren't they? They're on it. I've given two major updates to the private sector since last time we met. They were very well received. Even one of them had a trickle of applause, which I take as a good sign. And so that was the Growth Board and the Plymouth Area Business Council. I just need to mention a couple more things. The Millbay Net Zero MOU. I don't know whether people have really grasped just how significant this is. Not only as ABP and Millbay and the Millbay Port and Brittany Ferries working together, they're working together on an agenda to decarbonise the port, which I think is just going to be transformative. I mean, just to be clear about how much money we're talking about here, is about 22 million quid coming in to the port, right, which is fantastic. So we reckon, within 2 years we'll have shore power, which means they won't have to run the diesel engines in port anymore. Should be a big thing. But that means that Brittany Ferries have got to convert their two major ferries to be able to plug in the first place, right? So that'll be happening. But also, we had a good conversation around what Brittany Ferries are calling social dumping. I don't know if you remember a little while ago, but there was that hoo-ha about P&O Ferries sacking all their workers and then employing a load of other people on virtually slave labour conditions. Now, the thing is, in any race to the bottom, the bad employer will undercut the good. And in our case, we've got a good employer in terms of Brittany Ferries, given where they've come from and their sort of history, that paying people properly for doing the proper job is actually fundamental to their business model. But what they are saying is that if the government don't do something, and what the government seems to be doing at the moment is rewarding P&O for that bad behaviour, right? What we need to see now from the government is some spine on this, some backbone on this, and saying that this kind of behaviour is not acceptable in British ports. It's not acceptable for companies coming in and using our facilities, that they should be using slave labour in this way. So that we're gonna help argue for change on that, because it's like that old story about the astronaut sitting on top of the Saturn V rocket, and they said, what's your greatest fear? And they said, it's the fact that this rocket was put together using compulsory competitive tendering. And so it is for poor conditions amongst seafarers, that it's a worry for the safety of passengers, that the people who are serving them and running the ships are not being paid properly and are not enjoying proper terms and conditions. And that has to be a worry about the safety of passengers. I also would like to mention that I think it was last week, we talked about our new investment by the council on Embankment Road to bring a new hotel to the city there, which is going to be absolutely fantastic. We've been talking about this for a little while, I think, but it's brilliant that it's now going to be over the line and will be another another feather in our cap in terms of our offer to stay and visit us in the city. So congratulations to everyone involved in getting that deal over the line. I just want to try and run through some highlights that I raised with the Growth Board and PABC. Apologies if you've heard some of this before. You probably have if you've sat in a group room for any length of time. But I just need to run through a few things. And it's really important, there's the context for all of this. And I think, you know, it's easy to think now that, you know, we're in and we got a bit of stability and these things are very important. But it's also worth remembering that, you know, we've had a lot of bad things happening, which we've been pretty resilient about. So let's just look at COVID, right? We actually have recovered quite well from COVID. It's not just the council saying that, PricewaterhouseCoopers are saying that. We were number 5 in their good growth index. Now that was something we started during COVID. So we started the Resurgam Charter, which is now for some strange reason called the Plymouth Charter. And it's sort of, you know, that encourages employers to go for decent terms and conditions, trade union recognition, all that other stuff. So and we also ranked number 1 for the most improved city with the overall changing good growth score from last year to the current year. So that's pretty good. Brexit's starting to land really badly now. I mean, we always knew that this city relied more on access to the single market than any other city outside of London. This is something we're keeping a very close eye on. Ukraine's having an effect, cost of living crisis having an effect, and of course the council's own resources have worsened. So all of those things need remembering when we tell all of these good news stories. But there is some joy. As I say, this administration, elected in May, has a very strong majority, and we're hoping to strengthen that in the next election in May. We've an experienced cabinet. Yes, I know. Looking at you now, you may not think that, but actually it's very true. These are some of the most experienced people in local government nationally. We've got good access to influencing policymakers through our work and involvement with the Local Government Association. And, you know, we have got good, strong foundations. I think a phrase that David used a long time ago was, at least we weren't Middlesbrough. I think it was Middlesbrough. If it wasn't Middlesbrough, apologies to Middlesbrough, but it was that thing around having a cunning plan, right? It was that sort of thing. Anyway, so our agenda now is 5 priorities, okay? Green investment, jobs and skills, maximising any opportunities to come out of the Celtic array. That's assuming, of course, the government doesn't cock up the next round of bidding for licences, but that's another story. Build more homes, we've got to do that, because we've got workers that we need to attract into the city and there's somewhere that they've got to live. We're promising fewer potholes and cleaner, greener streets, and that's happening, I believe. We've talked about better access to healthcare, and boy, do we now know the reason why we need to campaign on that. And finally, we need to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. So, lots of things happening. We're unlocking stall investments. Derryford, the hotel scheme I've just talked about, and the port, and obviously Oceans Gate Phase 3. We're going to be building factories again, which is brilliant. Oceans Gate, there's a £6.5 million investment going in there, and the Langage Business Park as well, which is going to deliver about 5,500 metres squared of space, which is great. And then the port strategy that we've talked about, we've got 4 ports in Plymouth. Not a lot of people know that. I think if they sat down and thought about it, they'd realise that. But we have got 4. So we're going to put those together and actually for the first time try and have a port strategy. That's Denport, of course, Millbay, Sutton Harbour and Catwater. I mean, we are a UK port powerhouse. And, you know, we need to start getting the government to understand just how much we deliver for the country. We might not have masses of containers, things on the side of our docks, but actually we do a lot of heavy lifting for the economy and for the country. Brittany Ferries are looking to get more freight through, though, having said that. And part of their investment and part of ABP's investment is anticipating that. We know that Catwater Harbour Trustport are looking at ways in which they can expand their operations. And of course, we know about the Freeport. We've got money to spend on that, and we've got to get that over the line pretty soon. The investment in Colin Campbell Court we've got, which is terrific. We're going to have very soon now going to see the temporary building going in there, and then the new build in short order. So that's really exciting. That was a project that was going nowhere. And again, thanks to David and the team for the work they did on pulling that back and making it happen. And I know Mark was very busy with that quite a bit there as well. Brunel Plaza, I don't know whether you've been up to see the university building yet, but it's magnificent what they've done with the cladding and the whole approach there. And that's sort of basically first phase of a number of phases that we'll have to make that project happen. But, you know, bear in mind that we invited the university to be part of our little project, and that immediately turned it into an £80 million project, of which the university have already invested 40 million. I mean, that's, you know, that's an inward investment that you'd be championing normally. Just because they're already here, we should say thank you to the university for that investment, because it's significant and a real landmark for their work on health as well. National Marine Park, I'm not going to talk about now because we're going to have a bit of a tour de force in a minute. And of course, we'll be having conversations about the stuff that's going on in the dockyard at the moment. Don't forget, there's like £1.5 billion, £2 billion project going in the dockyard. So we're having conversations now about whether we get something out of that as a city, because in order for that project to work, there needs to be workers to make it. And we need to make sure that ongoing work and ongoing training is available. So we'll be talking more about that in due course. We've had some amazing press coverage over the summer as well. You'll have seen lots and lots of national stuff at the box, lots of stuff in even the fireworks, and it was on the telly. And but we've had interest from all sorts of people. Anyway, I haven't got time to tell you about all the things that are in the pipeline. I think what I'll do is next time we meet, I'll bring you up to date with some of the stuff that's in the pipeline, including things like the Science Park, and a bit more on the Freeport, perhaps, bring you up to date. That would be that, I think. I'm now going to ask Cabinet members to do some updates, if that's all right. So that's Sudan's first up, according to me.
I'll try and be as exciting as you were. Last time I was at Cabinet, we talked very much about the cost of living plan and some of the things that we were offering for people free across the city. And I talked about the summer Fit and Fed programme and what we were going to do. And I sort of announced that, you know, over the summer, there were over 24,000 sessions or days that we were offering free for young people and children across the city. And I know that there were a few sceptical faces. I still haven't got the final numbers, but I have got a little bit more of information about what we actually did. Because I think it is important to recognise that, you know, people often say, oh, it doesn't matter who's in charge in local government, you're all the same. But I actually don't think we are all the same. And what I want to show this time is how we've worked right across the city with different organisations supporting a lot of communities. So I said, oh, well, what sort of So I asked some questions. So what sort of holiday clubs are we offering? I asked. And it was water sports, science, sports, dance, theatre, climbing. We had a forestry school. And we worked with 10 new holiday club providers throughout the summer. And specifically, we provided 8 special educational needs specific holiday clubs as well. Because obviously not all our children and young people can access great big events. sometimes they need quieter, more bespoke classes. We delivered the 4 fit and fed park events across Central Park, Ernest Settle Green, Toptel and Victoria, and just on those 4 days alone we handed out over 2,500 lunches to the children who went there. But we also did some things that were slightly different. So for the first time this year, and it was a hot summer right at the very beginning of the year before the July rains, remember, we worked with Melanoma UK, so we offered free sun safety and sun protection, and that's actually really important for some more of our disadvantaged families where sun safety may not be part of their priorities, but we were giving out free suntan cream for families and children. We worked with Fair Share Southwest. They did Friday night takeaway bags for when we were working with the holiday clubs for some of our older, younger people across the city. And when families and children went to educational workshops, when they were learning how to budget, how to cook, we worked with Food Plymouth to provide some food for them to take away with them as well. We do know that we have a growing demand in the city as well for support for our children. So we did a lot of signposting, helping people and families in need who may need some social services help and support within their family. And it goes without saying that we handed out thousands of our cost of living leaflets, these ones here, which were picked up by the young families and the young children when they were having their food. It wasn't just the council that was doing this. It's quite nice that we've got Reese from Plymouth Active Leisure sitting over there, because I asked for some of the things, well, what were some of our partner organisations doing? And Plymouth Active Leisure had a cost of living summer programme going as well. Some of them were taster sessions, some of them were low price sessions, so you could swim for free. And obviously, because we took the decision not to bring in charges from out wise, some of the sessions were completely free. So over the summer, their active cost of living summer programme engaged over, well, nearly 11,000 people. It actually is probably over 11,000 people, because I'm just going to embarrass Councillor Coker now and give him an opportunity to speak, because he was worried he wasn't going to get to speak today, so that wouldn't be fair, would it? But on Friday, with Plymouth Active Leisure down at Mount Wise, they did a family fun night. And how successful was it, Councillor Coker?
Thank you, Councillor Dan. Yeah, obviously, as you quite rightly said, we valued Mount Wise pools, and during my election campaign, we promised to keep them free. We, as a group of councillors, we raised some money over the summer to be able to work with Plymouth Active Leisure. We did an event on Friday evening from 4 till 7. There was over 420 people that turned up at the pools with their families, from little tackers right the way through to grannies and granddads. And I was down there for 7 hours, and actually talking to the families that took part, that came down, and it was all free. We had various organisations, Beryl Bikes were there, Promotion were there, the RNIB were there. We had games going on. We had a musician or a DJ playing and entertaining the crowd. I want to pay tribute to everyone that was involved, but actually one of the things that, it was my idea all those months ago, but one of these things that actually came out of that is just how much families appreciate what we can do. You know, for over 400 people to be in the water, enjoying the water, probably, and I'm going to be biased, one of the most beautiful sites, underrated sites in the city. It just goes to show that things haven't got to cost an awful lot of money to do. And where there's a will, there's a way. And this was probably one of the most worthwhile things that I've done as a ward councillor, to see people there. So I think we need to turn on our heads how we look at events, including the water, the facilities that we've got, even at Mount Wise, because, you know, the amount of thank yous. And there was one family, and I'm going to mention this and then I'll shut up. There was one family that were actually walking by that were down here from Essex, and they spoke to the DJ, and I was dragged over, and he was, I'm going to go back to my councillors and share this, because they were blown away by what we were doing. So, you know, I just want to say thank you to everybody that took part, everybody that helped fund this, and it just goes to show we can do it if we want to. Thank you, Councillor Dan.
I think, and that's it. We'll leave it at that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you both very much indeed. If people want to see all of that stuff that you said happened, is there a place where they can see it? Is it on the website or anything like that?
So, as you know, we launched our cost of living launch on the August the 23rd, but it's a dynamic plan. So all the free stuff that will happen now for the rest of the year will always be updated on the website. But I think what we're trying to do is make sure that people who don't normally look on the website for things start looking, and it's not just the normal people who trawl Facebook for free events, because actually right across the city, if you look at the YMCA, Plymouth Argyle Community Trust, PALS, everybody did loads of things across the city, and it'll be really interesting, and I'm sure we're going to do this. It's just to try and capture all the support that actually is available for families and residents in all sort of areas. It's part of Mary's, you know, growing ageing well agenda, isn't it? If we can get people active at a young age, they'll keep on doing it as they get older. Well, that's the plan.
It's a bit of investment in the future, isn't it, as well as at the present? All right, we'll ask you a bit more about what you're going to do in a little while, but in terms of capturing all that help and support that we've already enjoyed, it would be great if we can have a place for acknowledging that. Okay, Jemima?
Thank you. I'm not in competition with Mark, but I think I have a really, really good announcement to make too about something that's going to be free for Plymothians. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to share that we're going to be bringing back Bonfire Night on the Hoe for 2023. It's the centrepiece of a free fun campaign, which is a major plank of Councillor Dan's cost of living action plan. We all know that one of the first things that families have to give up during a financial squeeze like the one we're experiencing at the moment is those little extras that actually make life worth living. The little extra treats that bring people together, give people a break, make life fun, have sadly fallen away for so many families in Plymouth who are being forced to make the choice between eating and heating. So as part of the cost of living action plan, we built a campaign of free fun, a list of activities that Plymothians can enjoy for free without having to worry about money, not stretching for the next meal or for buying school uniform or any other number of essentials. And the reason we're bringing back the Bonfire Night on the Hoe for 2023 is that of all our events, it's the one that really engages local communities. Anybody who stood on the Hoe with 25,000 other Janners will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's an opportunity for Plymouth to come together on the Hoe, as we always have, and to enjoy the bonfire and fireworks display for free. And I hope that families can, at least for one evening, not have to worry about the cost of living crisis. And I'm really delighted to say this has been made possible by the generous sponsorship of Plymouth Waterfront Partnership and the success of the brilliant events team in exceeding their income targets. So really looking forward to that. Thank you, Leader.
That's fabulous news, isn't it? It really is. Okay, next on my list of people who want to say something is Sally Hayden.
Thank you, Leader. We're fast approaching Freshers Week, so keeping our community safety in mind, I'm really pleased to say our marshals will be starting on the 8th of September. This will provide additional support to students coming or returning to university. The marshals will all be linked up to the city's CCTV system, and this will be able to help them deploy any situations. Some of the links they'll be able to use is including the police, door staff, the safe bus, night patrol and the street pastors. The funding for this project is through the Home Office Safer Streets Forward funding, which was allocated to the University of Plymouth, but we are very grateful to them for supporting this scheme. So that's the first thing, Leader, and I just would like to plug some really good things that happened last week. So last week, Plymouth was the first time in this city that we held a conference for Time for Change. This was the man culture, and this was male, I can't speak, sorry, Trina. Male culture and its impact against women. It was held at Plymouth Argyle. It was absolutely packed. We had some fantastic speakers, and I'm sure we're going to get an awful lot out of it. But it's the first, and I'm sure not the last, to see in the city. And I can't not plug the fact of our libraries. We eventually got our final numbers through for our summer reading challenge, and we are up 23% this year from last year, which is brilliant. And just if you just think of the libraries, the visits of libraries is up 19%, rhyme times up 49.64%. The libraries and their staff are doing an absolutely fantastic job, and music lending has come back as well. We actually lend an awful lot of music, and that's up 33%. So all good news from my point. Thank you.
That's really good news indeed, and thanks to the library staff for going that extra mile, because we know how tough it is out there for them at the moment. Tom.
Thank you, Leader. Shortly before the election, Plymouth Labour pledged to introduce rooftop solar panels as part of our Greening the City Centre manifesto. So I'm delighted to announce that the previously unused top deck, level 12 of the Theatre Royal car park, is now home to a large solar array, which I had the pleasure of visiting last week. The electricity generated by the solar panels is already powering that particular car park and therefore supporting the decarbonisation of this site. Surplus energy is then exported back into the Plymouth local grid. However, in the longer term, I'd personally like to see the electricity feed into our nearby Guildhall and Council House mini network. We are investigating a virtual private wire where through smart monitoring, the solar electricity generated could then be used to power right here. This would power the new heat pump's electrical consumption. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tom. That's really quite inspiring, isn't it? And we did promise we'd bring in solar into the city centre, so that's a great start. Okay, Chris.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to talk a little bit about housing. And today I'm not going to be talking about homelessness, I'm going to be talking about the other end of the pipeline. And to update on some good news on some of our plan for home sites. You might remember, pre-COVID, we talked about St Peter's Close in Plymouth, an old caravan storage site which we were working with Westwood to bring forward as bungalows. COVID, Brexit, the impact of all of that on building industry had created a stalled site. And I'm really pleased that a couple of weeks ago I was able to join Westwood there as trenches are being dug and foundations laid for 5 new bungalows. Classic Builders working on those. 2 of those will be for affordable home ownership. The other 3, all of them at social rent. 1 of them fully accessible and 2 of them adaptable. So meeting our commitments to develop more bungalows to meet the needs of people downsizing and to support people with disabilities. So I'm really pleased that that one's coming forward in Plympton. Westwood at the same time, and for the same reasons but a different builder, had problems with Moses Close in Southway, and a while ago I think I might have informed the Cabinet that I'd been to see the old community centre being demolished in preparation. Well, they too have now started on site, and that's going to be 13 homes for affordable rent. So Westwood really pulling out the stops there to get more social rent here in Plymouth. And that's going to be 6 one-bed flats, 2 of which will be accessible or adaptable, 6 2-bed terraced houses and 1 end of terrace bungalow. So up in Southway, more affordable housing, including another bungalow and more accessible units. Moving away from affordable to the other end of the market, we are dipping our toe into direct building again. And we're not starting with affordable homes. Too often, I think, ward councillors will recognise that developers say, we can't do good design, we can't do low carbon, we can't do lifetime standards, we can't do all of that and actually bring in a viable product. So we won't pay you all the Section 106s because that's the way viability works, and we won't give you the best quality because that's the way viability works. I didn't believe them. So I set the team a challenge, and working with Councillor Mrs Pengelly, the late Councillor Mrs Pengelly, we said, let's work on a direct delivery scheme in Plymstock on the Old Morley Youth Centre site. And last week, I was putting tiles on one of the houses up there on the rafters, enjoying views right across Plymouth. We're going to be presenting to the market this week 10 new homes, eco-friendly homes with nice high ceilings and plenty of space, with gardens, 2 car parking spaces each, ready to have electric charging points put in if the owners choose to do so, with heat pumps and solar panels and air extraction all built into the system. Fantastic design with a little village green in the middle, and a concept of a Plymouth home, setting a benchmark for the private sector and private developers, but for us as we begin to move into more direct delivery of more affordable homes in the city. And the profits from the site will be ploughed back into the investment fund for homes, so we'll support more affordable house building in the city as well. So I'm going to do a plug. There are many estate agents available in the city, but if you want to find Broadland Gardens, you'll need to go to Town and Country New Homes section, where the brochure will be available during the course of this week. And there will be a viewing day early in October for people who want to go visit the site and hopefully reserve their new home. I just wish I could afford to buy one.
Oh, that's great news, Chris. That's really quite a flying start, I think, and it's a great tribute to the cross-party working that you did with the late Councillor Pengelly.
In fact, in the middle of the green, we're going to plant a big tree appropriate for the size. And I've asked the team to make sure when we do that, we unveil a plaque in memory of older woman Vivian Pengelly and her service to Plymstock.
Yes, lovely thought. So, Mary's not here now, but she's already sort of said about the dentistry. So I'm going to ask Sally Cresswell, who has made it here from her meeting, to speak to us next.
Thank you, Leader. I've actually got 4 announcements to make. The first one is an update on RAC so far, and we've been very proactive in communicating with our school leaders on this matter, as we knew, and rightly so, that parents and carers would have been very concerned about the news reports around the use of reinforced, autoclaved, aerated concrete RAC in school buildings. Since 2018, we've carried out surveys on the 14 of our local authority maintained schools, and none have been found to contain RAC. Academies and multi-academy trusts are responsible for their own school buildings, and school leaders would have been contacted with the Department of Education about this issue earlier in the year. Neither we nor any of our MATs have been notified that any schools in Plymouth are affected by this issue, but our education team still contacted chief executives of academies and head teachers to confirm that relevant checks had taken place and offer support if needed. And I'm pleased to say that MATs have welcomed this communication with the local authority, and to date, the public statement remains accurate that RAC hasn't been identified in any of the schools, and all of the MATs have been back in contact with us. I just want to add something else, is that I think it's very sad that the Building Schools for the Future programme was actually cancelled in 2010, and what we're seeing with the state of our school buildings is that this was a very short-sighted decision. £70 million, I think, was promised to Plymouth in what would have been 2010, and that was then cancelled. And it might just be interesting to know that that political decisions were made over this. So therefore, consequently, instead of building schools for the future, the government decided that there would be a free school programme instead. However, it's just been revealed that the government didn't actually carry out detailed surveys before it actually bought many free school sites. And a good example was given of the Royal Mail sorting office site, which was used for Northampton International Academy. The refurbishment of that school actually cost £40 million. And last week, that was actually one of the 147 schools that was named as actually having RAC. So just bear that one in mind. So thank you for indulging me on that. The SEND improvement plan, and I have to apologise that I was here late along with our chief executive, Tracy Lee, and also with David Haley as well. But the Area SEND Special Educational Needs Inspection of Plymouth Local Area Partnership took place from the 26th to the 30th of June. The inspection report was published on the 22nd of August 2023, and we fully accept the findings of Ofsted. 5 areas of priority, 9 strands identified, one area in particular relating to vulnerable children living in residential special schools and children's homes at a distance and children receiving short breaks was addressed immediately so as to ensure reassurance about their safety, and I'm very pleased to report that that happened straight away. Cross-partnership working has been going on to communicate about the report and get engagement in developing and implementing the action plan for improvement. Officers have liaised closely with health and with school leaders and with PPCV, which is the Plymouth Parent Carer Voice. That's the Plymouth Parents Carer Forum, which brings together parents, carers of children with SEND and young people themselves and the DfE. There's a senior officers portfolio holder and DFA meeting which happened today, which is why I arrived late, on Monday the 11th of September, which was very constructive. A workshop involving stakeholders, which will be included as well as Plymouth City Council, the NHS, named schools and college leaders, which is planned for the 20th of September. And the first SEND Improvement Board will be on Thursday, the 21st of September, and then 6 weekly. And the action plan will be published on the 29th of September. Again, if you'll indulge me a little, and if I could just say that we fully accept the reports from Ofsted, but I think one has to bear in mind that there has been, at the same time as a demand for SEND places, there has been serious squeezing on resources as far as particularly schools have been concerned. And in February 2020, Ofsted's own research revealed that children with SEND or disabilities particularly affected by the ongoing financial pressures that were being put on schools. In 2020, in that questionnaire, of the of the primary and secondary heads who responded, 80% of primary heads and 72% of secondary heads said that changes to SEND provision had been due to the financial pressures. And I do think we do need to keep that in the back of our minds, because a downward spiral of SEND funding is going to eventually have long-term impact on provision for some of our most vulnerable children. I'd like to say on a couple two very positive things: funded short breaks innovation grant and the DFE visit, which was on the 6th of September. Now, the short breaks innovation grant is designed to develop the necessary skills and knowledge to transition to adulthood safely. This is for our SEND young people securely and in ways that maximise life chances. It will develop and shape resilient young adults living safe, healthy, positive and productive independent lives. The funding's in its second year, and in year one, 100 young people access the programme, and in year two for us, it aimed to help 150 unique young people. We're in the process now of applying for year three funding, which will see 200 young people aged 14 to 25 access the programme. The fund is separate to the statutory short breaks provided by Plymouth City Council. The fund is aimed at young people with additional needs, as I've said. At the visit by the DFE, which was last Wednesday, the staff were able to give them an opportunity to visit the actual providers and speak to staff and young people themselves. We're currently in year two of funding from the DFE, and we've received 750,000 for this year, and we had 750,000 in year one. The current programme is running in partnership with a number of providers, including our own youth services, City College, Live Well, Eat That Frog, Plymouth Parent Carer Voice. And the core aim is to engage young people identified as having SEND and or subject to an EHCP to structured activities and learning experience to help reduce social isolation and loneliness, improve social, emotional, mental health, improve physical health and fitness, develop soft skills, and develop independence and resilience, which is so important. The success of the programme so far means we're in the process for applying for year three funding, and the funding we're asking for is 1.125 million. The additional funding would enable us to create the future programme, which is an employability and fusion skills focused programme of classroom-based learning with combined residential activities as well in the locality, aimed at helping to develop new skills and for young people to develop meaningful work experience and enhance their employability. Through the programme, participants will improve their understanding of work-related skills, communication, self-reliance, while building relationships with their peers across Plymouth. And my fourth one, sorry to dominate on this, leader, but is our attendance campaign. And at the end of August, the beginning of September, we launched our school attendance campaign, because good school attendance is really important for all our children to help them to achieve their full potential. And it really isn't just about grades, though they're obviously important. It's about personal development, about being with friends, of being part of the school community and all the opportunities that are on offer there. This is an issue right across the country, and levels of school absence and persistent absence have increased, especially since COVID. Pre-pandemic in 2018-19, Plymouth's overall absence rate was 4.9%, but post-COVID, 21-22, 8.8%. We know that the reasons why children and young people miss school are very many and complex, and there's no simple solutions, and we aren't the only local authority in this position. However, we launched to be proactive, launched a campaign to try to encourage and support good school attendance, because we believe that good school attendance matters to all of us. This has been a partnership of working with our schools and with our MATs to help to support our own parents and carers. We know that schools do their best to encourage good attendance. We know it isn't always easy for parents and carers either, which is why some of the materials on offer and advice is to support parents too. One of the things we've produced is a booklet sent to all schools, which includes cost of living information on the back page. Thank you very much for some of that, and that information has gone down very well. We've got a toolkit sent to schools with a message which is actually from myself as well, a series of social media graphics, a series of posters for schools to be able to utilise, one for primary, one for secondary, a series of videos with teachers, and I'm very grateful to those members of MATS and such who took part with me in actually producing that video, and they've gone out on social media. A web content's also been updated for the launch to reflect the campaign. And finally, if I could just say, we've largely had some very positive responses. And on West Country Television on Friday, they were very keen to take up the issue, and they ran an excellent in-depth item on the issue of attendance. And it was all filmed at Plymouth School with excellent contributions from the head teacher, Alan Yendall, and 2 Year 8 pupils who made a really brilliant contribution. It went out on both the early and late evening news, and I have to say many thanks to the pupils and to a number of staff in Plymouth who entered into this really well in a really positive way. And the second phase of the campaign will happen later in the term, with the focus and messaging being very much, in fact, from the young people themselves, talking to other young people. Thank you for indulging me. And that is the end of my announcements.
That's very good news to end on, I think. Thank you, Sally. So that's the end of the Cabinet announcements. Okay, thank you all very much indeed for your announcements and the work that goes into them. I'm now going to move to agenda number 8, which is the National Marine Park Horizons project. Shall we allow our guests, because we have been joining, because the thing is about this, right? I mean, you know, it's not just down to the work of 1 or 2 people, is it? It's a huge endeavour. So I'm just going to welcome Sharon Mercer, who's our head of strategic programmes. Welcome, Sharon. Elaine Hayes, who's the National Marine Park CEO. We've got Rhys Jones here from Plymouth Active Leisure, Nicola Bridge from Ocean Conservation Trust, Chris Burton, who manages Mount Edgecombe Estate for us, and Alex King from the Mountbatten Group, who will have quite a bit of excitement when this lottery bid gets accepted, as I'm sure it will. So it is exciting, to be honest, and I think it's fair to say that this update's going to blow your mind, to be honest. I mean, perhaps more importantly, it needs to blow the mind of the assessors at the National Lottery. That's probably more important, if you'll forgive me, but that's what's got to happen. They're going to get our submission, round 2 submission this week. Is it Thursday, Friday? Friday. They'll have the whole weekend to get excited about it. So last week, I took an executive decision to enable the bid to be submitted. And along with Tom, we're going to tell you a little bit about it before showing the pitch video, the extended version, the 12-inch single of submission videos, if you will. I think it's fair to say that I think, you know, the council's done some of its best work working with the lottery over the last decade. If you think about the box and you think about this. When we saw the announcement for the Heritage Fund Horizons Awards, which celebrates 25 years of the National Lottery, there was only one project really that fitted the scale of ambition, transformation and innovation, and that was to create the UK's first national marine park in the magnificent Plymouth Sound. Some people may take it for granted. I was talking to somebody about this morning, but actually it's where we live. And I never, ever get tired when I go, I've seen the Hope and seen the sea when I get up there. It's what brought me here in the first place, to be honest with you. And I remember well when we did the Mackie vision report, how completely blown away Mackie, who'd seen a few places in his time, by the way, you know, Barcelona not excluded there, and but he said it was quite a unique natural landscape. I mean, if you think about it, it's been going for quite some time, probably the Bronze Age, I think. I always like to tell our friends in Exeter that we've had stuff going on a lot longer than. But you know, we have actually in this little bit of water out here borne witness to some of the most significant episodes of human endeavour, really. Anyway, unlike some other national parks and celebrated landscapes, most of ours is under the sea and therefore hidden from view. And I believe we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with the creation of the Plymouth Sound National Marine Park to reconnect this city of 250,000 people with the ocean. We're not going to stop there, of course. We'll work to create a blueprint that can be used to create a whole suite of new marine national parks. That'll be as significant as the first one, as the first national park was in 1951. And I know that Luke Pollard was in London last week with Martin and Attrill, who I think we've probably got to thank for raising the idea of a national marine park for Plymouth a few years ago. So it was good to see them together calling for a network of parks. So, you know, we're here to start the ball rolling, really. So we're going to give you a flavour of our bid. And, you know, we have been working on this for a while now. We cheekily designated ourselves the first national marine park a few years ago now. But we've been working on this. Pat Patel was in this space, and Andy is supporting it now. So we're working cross-parties. It's important that projects of this significance are cross-party because they need to survive changes of political administration. So it's really important that we're all bought in. So what are we asking for? £22 million. And us being us, we want another 3 million, don't we? I mean, it wouldn't be us without asking cheekily if we could have more money, even though they've already told us. Because our project, as I say, 22 million, but the lottery are going to provide, we hope, 12 million in the end towards that, right? So we will be putting some money in. But, you know, part of this reason for the ask is simply the inflation that's happened over the last few years. So, but the council is putting this money where its mouth is. 3 million quid's already gone into underwriting. There's 2 million more to get things underway quickly. We'll transform in the Mountbatten Peninsula, the Mountbatten Water Sports Centre, and we're obviously, I mean, say, a particular bugbear of mine is, you know, how many cities do you know that's got a Norman tower that's virtually closed all the time? Well, none, except for Plymouth, of course, because we specialise in taking history for granted. So this will be really good that we can open that back up. We're going to give Tinside some TLC. That'll bring in 3 derelict buildings back into use. And if any of you have had the pleasure of the second floor tour, that's one to avoid. But in the future, it will be one to definitely that you want to make a beeline for, because it's probably the best window in Plymouth, it'll be, I think. We're going to open the Garden Battery in Mount Edgecombe to the public for the first time since World War II, so that'll be all right. And that is a magnificent space. We're going to improve in the work we're doing, obviously, at Firestone Bay and Erniesettle Creek. So that's more about community engagement, and we've listened very carefully to what residents have told us about what they want there. We're going to have some nice new interpretation. We've got a unique collection of about 365 different types of interpretation in the sea. So we're actually going to try and sort of bring that all together in some new stuff that you can actually read. We're going big on digital. For a little while there, we kind of didn't know what we wanted to do, but we got a good idea of what we want to do now. So we're going to get engaged with some like proper global experts in doing this, because you only get to do this once properly. So that's what we're going to do. The whole idea of this is we want you to see what's going on underneath the water. That's the whole purpose of that digital project, really. We're going to tap into volunteering. Our aim is to get about 100,000 hours of volunteer time out of this project, which is amazing. And then we'll be delivering the city's biggest ever 5-year community engagement programme, which will be focused around the ocean, expanding our rangers scheme, stepping up swimming lessons, getting more people on the water, a massive schools programme, community archaeology, I like the sound of that, work experience placements, and a huge new National Marine Park Festival. This is all good. I don't know about you, but I mean, I just can't wait to get started on this. It's going to be fantastic. So we'll get to host a visit from the trustees of the National Lottery. So it'd probably be, you know, less Bibb and Tucker for that one. But more importantly, it will be making sure that the things we tell them when they come are true and real. That's the most important thing. What always wins us the money is our authenticity. We don't really promise what we can't deliver. We always deliver. And one of the things that the lottery can be assured of is if they give us money, we will spend it wisely and we will deliver projects to be proud of. Now, the other bit is about the 1,000 species that live underwater. And so let's bring in Tom now, who'll tell us a bit more about the really important environmental and nature dimension to this project.
Thank you, Leader. Before I start on the nature side of it, I just wanted to say how great it's been, a real honour to work with the team this year. Can't thank them enough for the huge amount of work that they've been doing, whether it's talking to them in board meetings, whether it's portfolio holder meetings with CAT. It's been abundantly clear that they've all gone above and beyond to make this submission exemplary. I've been personally focused on the nature elements of the National Marine Park concept. Plymouth Sound, as Tudor's already mentioned, is such a special habitat, but sadly, like so many of our natural spaces, it has suffered with species and habitat coming under pressure. So it's really important to me that this project had solid environmental and conservation credentials in addition to all the positive stuff that has already been outlined. So as part of the project, we've identified 5 special nature boost projects to help support the recovery of both species and habitats. I'm just going to say a little bit about each of those. So the first one is Nature Capital. So we will be developing pilot seagrass recovery and protection schemes with a new community ownership investment model. Secondly, Biogenic Reefs, which is a habitat restoration project for oysters and mussels. A third one is focusing on mudflats and salt marsh. We will support little egrets and avocets through respiration of these important intertidal habitats found in the upper reaches of both the Plym and the Tamar. Then we've got the species boost. So we'll be seeking to support the recovery of iconic species such as thornback rays, seahorses, sand eels, and of course the Alice shad, which is a rare species of fish that only spawns in the Tamar as far as we're aware. And finally, Community Boost will be introducing a small community grant to support community science and nature projects. We also wanted to talk about an overall monumental ambition, I think it's fair to call it, of creating 250,000 marine citizens across Plymouth. So through closer connections with the ocean, really learning to care about it, and then making small behavioural changes that will add up to a really big difference in this city and further afield. If you think about the impact on conservation of the UK's 15 national parks over the last 70 years, I think we can only be excited about the possibility of our very first national marine park here. If we can inspire the next generation of Plymouth to realise that they can individually make a difference to marine life in Plymouth Sound, I think this could go a really long way to inspiring the behaviour change for us all to do a bit locally to tackle the climate change more widely.
Oh, it's terrific, isn't it? And yet another unique creature for Plymouth. going along with the horrid ground weaver, which we all know and love, and various others, and the Plymouth pear, the most inedible fruit in the world. So it's very exciting. I think now this will give us a segue into the video, if that's all right. Because what we'd like to do now is show this, so it'll hopefully be on the record on our website, so people in Plymouth will get a sense of what we're pitching for and how we're pitching for it. So, Elliot, if you can make the magic happen.
Through the Horizon funding, we aim to support everyone who lives, works and visits Plymouth into becoming a marine citizen, inspiring them to experience, connect and act.
What it's really about is respect and love for this water out here, where so much happens on a daily basis.
We've spoken to more than 10,000 people, engaged with 155 community groups, visited 46 primary schools, inspiring over 7,000 children. 200 volunteers have contributed more than 1,500 hours of their time. We've gained a greater awareness of the challenges facing many of our communities. Barriers include cost, accessibility, confidence, and a sense of not being welcome. All fundamental issues requiring a transformational approach to overcome them. We've learned that low levels of water confidence and a lack of ocean knowledge prevents people from accessing the heritage of the park. The learning phase of the project has proved essential and has played an integral role in shaping our delivery model.
We're really excited about the next 5 years. We've already learnt so much about how we can engage people. So we're going to use that learning to help to connect people with the water. And then through that connection, we'll build understanding of what the ocean does for us and how we impact it.
Ultimately, we're trying to invoke behaviour change, inspiring a positive response to the climate emergency and a new sustainable relationship with the sea.
The entire city is supportive of our plans to deliver the vision for the park through an integrated programme that includes a pioneering accessible digital marine park, transformation of our waterfront heritage and an inclusive activity plan.
Our activity plan aims to reconnect people to the sea through experience and engagement with activities and events, including a 5-year schools programme, Teach the Teacher programme, and a digital curriculum platform, as well as enabling people to connect and act by furthering work at Ernest Ethel and Firestone Bay, as well as 3 new communities within Plymouth Sound National Marine Park, and through a significant volunteer programme with pathways for progression, skills, development and work experience.
Changing developments at Mountbatten have been designed to transform the peninsula, growing the reach and increasing inclusive access, changing perception, understanding and engagement with the water, nature and the surrounding heritage with which it interacts.
One thing I've really learned over this period of consultation is how proud and passionate people are of this venue. Tinside Lido is an unbelievable place and it's so important we get more people involved in this.
We're going to create a place that people can visit. It's beautiful patina. We'll have access to the building. People can see what we're seeing now.
We have developed Nature Boost projects aimed at helping to enhance Plymouth Sound, supporting a healthy and wildlife-rich environment. We will work with iconic fish species such as seahorses and shad, with birds including avocets and egrets, as well as the continued restoration of seagrass.
We've already seen lots of people wanting to get out with 360 cameras, engaging with what the ocean is all about, but using the excitement of new technology.
Our digital project will enable inclusion, opening up a world beneath the surface to a wide, diverse audience.
All elements of this project are integrated to enable us to deliver an accessible national marine park for everyone.
We're incredibly excited for the delivery phase of the project, helping to turn our city back to the sea, investing in people and nature for the future of our planet.
Thanks to you.
Hooray! Actually, you're all beautiful, darlings, all beautiful. Not once, not once. Unrealistic. No, seriously, that's a cracking video, and congratulations, not just to the speakers and the partners, but to the people who made them put that video together. It's an exceptionally good video, and it shows our arguments for that money in a really good way, don't they? I know you all said stuff on there, but I'm going to ask you anyway, if that's all right. I suppose if I turn to Cat and Elaine first, what's the one thing, you can have one each or one between you, I don't mind, but what's the one thing that you're excited about in the bid?
I think that's a bit of an easy question for me to choose. For me, it has to be all about the nature. Plymouth Sound is just the most special place, and delivering a £1 million investment into nature, and it won't be £1 million, as Kat and I've talked about, because we will make it more than that as time goes by, and that will be transformative for that body of water, and will just bring people flocking because it will be so amazing. And I think for me, it's definitely the working with people. I think there's a number of us here today, but there were teams beavering away at the minute getting this bid finished, teams within every organisation here that's been part of it, and the engagement we've had with everyone we've spoke to has been phenomenal. Those that go in the water every single day to those that had never been before, and I think that's what's going to make this really, really special, is how all those people are coming together and all believe in the same thing, because there's no rules here. People are making this happen, and I think, you know, to see what we've done in 2 years with 10% of the money, I think what we can do in 5 years with 90% of the money.
Thank you both. Thank you both. Rhys, obviously you love the Lido already. What are you looking forward to the most?
I'm glad you didn't ask me to choose one thing, because there's a few things. First of all, obviously we want to transform the experience of the tour on the first floor, because we don't want it to be the worst one in Plymouth anymore. But yeah, I mean, for me, in my world, I think the impact on water safety and swimming, I think really, really important in Britain's ocean city. Taking the chance to be able to engage with more young people who maybe haven't got the opportunity or aren't able to, you know, to try and get into that world and try and make sure that they're safer in the water is, you know, something really I'm passionate about, and, you know, I really want to make a difference in that.
So again, Nicola, you gave a very good reason why this bid should be back from your point of view, but is there one or two things that you'd like to mention?
It is difficult to only mention one or two things, I must say. I think when I met Kat and David 2 or 3 years ago now, I said for the Ocean Conservation Trust, this is a dream. You know, running the National Marine Aquarium on the shores of the Plymouth Sound National Marine Park, our whole thing is about connecting people, especially obviously children, through our schools programme. So being able to deliver that with this funding, you know, we've always taught kids about the ocean. But I think we've taught children about the ocean all around the world. But to be able to really talk to children that live in Plymouth about their sea and about the blue economy and about attainment and all of the stuff that we can do around that subject area is just, it's wonderful. And then the really great thing is how much everyone's listened through the testing and trialling that we did, and that we're going to be able to help the teachers with this as well, because there's no point in us doing 5 years of great things, not training the teachers and then walking away. We're going to be training the teachers too, so we've got that legacy. So, it's really, really exciting. I'll stop now.
Alex, there's you talked about transformation of the peninsula there and your own place as well. What's exciting about it for you?
I think what's really exciting about it for me is that some of the things that we already do but at a low level in terms of removing the barriers to participation for people, be they physical, financial or geographical in this city, expanding that, growing that, making it much, much bigger and creating more opportunity for people to engage with Plymouth Sound and understand it in a different way. We know from some of the stuff that we've done before that that creates whole households that link in different ways, and there's consequential conversation about the heritage and the history and the environment that perhaps
wouldn't be obvious to a young person, wouldn't be obvious perhaps to the older generation in terms of understanding, joining that to that. That creates that conversation. It starts to make people proud of what they've got. And I've been in Plymouth now since 1998. I'm not Plymouthian, but I'm very, very proud of the opportunity that we have out there. And the waters we have out there are world class. And people being proud of that can only grow the opportunity and make people from regional, national and international spheres want to come to us and look at that more. And I'm really, really excited about that.
Thanks a lot, Alex. That's really good. Last on the list, Chris, obviously the battery's quite a big thing, isn't it?
It is, and Mount Edgecombe is full of hidden secrets, and it's a chance for us to get a building that is absolutely beautiful inside. It blows your mind when you see it out for people to access. But beyond that, really, as well, it's about engaging the community again. I was lucky enough through some projects related to it just recently. We went to Drake's Island, looking at doing some foreshore archaeology. And the sort of buy-in from the kids and things, and the hands-on archaeology, finding a bit of Georgian tile or a bit of, Victorian teacup was really exciting for them. And it was that, so I think being the heritage hub isn't just about this amazing building that will allow access to for the first time. It's also about people engaging with that heritage, which often if they don't know it's there, they can't really do it. So it was very exciting.
I don't want to leave it there. David, I know you're not on my list, but I've got to ask you because you have got this grip now, and so what is it about for you?
Well, there's two things I think, Tudor. The first is that this is a really big deal for the lottery. So we were the first city to get a national lottery bid, which is generally over 10 million, on the first time of trying with the box. No one had ever done that. Generally, everyone had done it second or third. And we're the only city ever to get 2 national lottery bids. And that talks to the skill set we've got, the quality of the governance we've got, the quality of the cross-party support we have. And I think that's just not to be understated, because it's how partnerships work. And if you, as you said earlier, if you do what you say, then you'll get that money. So I mean, that's quite a nice accolade. So we really have a good relationship with the lottery, and we I think it could be great. I hope some of them are watching this because they'll see the depth of the partnership. If not, we'll send them the link. And the other thing, just to perhaps briefly mention, is that if you go and read on Wikipedia about the national parks and the bravery in 1951, and I was born and bred in the Peak District actually, and that was the first national park, and then the lakes and the Yorkshire Dales. That's defined me, that my relationship with nature through being brought up in the Peak District, my relationship with outdoor spaces, my relationship with health and well-being, fitness, exercise. Those are all things that were defined by that experience I had growing up in and around the Peak District. So if you just pause for a minute, that movement of 15 national parks that everyone takes for granted as iconic symbols, that will stand the brand, that everyone knows what they stand for. Well, just pause and reflect on what I'm going to say. We are creating the UK's first national marine park. So it's not an endeavour to be taken lightly, and that's hopefully the mindset you've got from today. So I think I always say it's like you have to do what Yoda says, you do or you don't do, there is no try. And I think it's the same here. We either do this and we approach it like they did in 1951 and set out to correct that movement of change, or you don't. And hopefully what you've seen today is an approach that shows we're deadly serious about that. And it's so much more. It's about the economy, it's about the Vista economy, it's about health and well-being, it's about inclusion. So we'll have a ruthless return on investment. I'm not ashamed of that. But I think we're in a really good place, and I hope that the lottery feel we've listened and worked with them, and all being well, we'll get permission to start, subject to the process, in January. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you, David. I mean, it's fair to say, that it's a very compelling case that's been put together by the partners and all those people who've worked so hard. I'm probably not looking forward as much as you guys are to having to sleep on Saturday when you finally don't have to work till 1 in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning as you have been on this. So it's really important to acknowledge just how much effort has gone into this by the people here and others who are not here today, because, you know, it's not easy to get this money. You have to prove proof of concept, yeah, but you've got to show how. And it's been really, really easy to make the overarching case for this. But what's really, really tricky is making sure that the delivery side is well described and well understood. And that's where a lot of the effort has been expended and needs to be, because they'll ask tricky questions. They always do. And that's quite right, because it's other people's money, isn't it? But I think this stands to be one of the most thrilling things we've done. It's not like a lot of stuff, a series of, you know, in separate standalone projects. It's actually all about a theme, and for me, and I think for you too, Tommy, the overarching theme is around the nature and around all of that. Everything else that we're doing here is really important as well, but fundamentally, you know, when we talked at the original pitch about the horizon and about sea level change and about climate change and about all of those other things that's going on, it's got to be, if we can turn people on in Plymouth again to realising their role in making this ocean recover and making it a happy place for loads of things, then, you know, our job will have been done. And you're right, it's not overstating it to say this is as significant as 1951. I think it really is. For this country anyway. We know around the world that others have already got the message that ocean protection is really important, and also funding models vary from place to place. We've got our own thing to do. But I do say this, we said at the start, we want to do it, not just for ourselves, important though that is, but we want to create a model and a template for others around the UK to follow, because we feel that if they can make it in Plymouth, which has got the most conflicted and complicated waters of anywhere in the country, then we can make it anywhere. So we're happy to do that for the nation, as well as doing it for the public here. So once again, I want to thank you all on behalf of the Cabinet here, but also on behalf of the whole Council, about how hard you have worked on this. It's been just so fantastic. You've been amazing, and I hope we'll get the rewards very shortly. If any group of people deserves to have that acknowledgement and that reward, it's you. So thank you very much, and thanks for coming today. Right, yeah. Okie dokie. I think we'll now move on to another exciting piece of work, which has already been, I think, trailed earlier on today by Councillor Dan. It's item 9 on the agenda, and it's the cost of living action plan. So I'm going to give the floor to Sue.
Okay, so this has been sort of in the making, if you like, from when we took control of the council way back in May, and we were challenged as a new Labour-controlled council to come up with an action plan to support the wider city in terms of the cost of living crisis. I know I've said I've gone on about this again, but I think it is worth repeating that this is not a standalone project. This is something which is going to influence the way the city tackles poverty as we move forward, as it transitions into a longer term plan. You know, you look at the high-line figures when they say, oh, the cap's coming down on energy prices and the inflation on food is stalling and all the rest of it. They're stalling, but they're not coming down. So people throughout the summer are already beginning to feel the pinch. I'm going to ask Sally in a little minute just to talk about her experience when she went to one of the schools about how the campaign for the cost of living crisis in terms of tackling some of childhood poverty is beginning to get through to parents, because it is not going to go away. I mean, you know, most people's energy bills this year will be twice as high as they were 12 months ago, and there is no extra support coming from government this time. Food prices have gone up and they are staying up, and even the cost of basics like milk, although it's come down a little bit, it's still, you know, 50, 60p for a container more than it was 12 months ago. And most people have virtually stagnant wages. And I haven't even really added on the cost of what it is just to live. People's rents are going up, people's mortgages are going to go up, you know, and there are going to be people who are going to be in a financial crisis who have never been there before. And I know that's all gloom and doom, and we don't have a massive pot of money as the council or as partners in the city to throw it at people. So the whole idea of this plan is to come up with something which is very proactive and will help people once they realise what is going on. So although it was launched on August the 23rd, just after the last full council, of course, we've been doing stuff all summer. Anybody who's looked at the Helping Plymouth website will know that we've got loads of information on there that people can access very, very quickly. We haven't waited, and we've been promoting everything that can be free that we can do, and we're doing targeted campaigns. So before I go into what we've actually done in terms of their campaigning, because I think it is interesting just how many people are accessing the information. And then I'd like to talk about what we're going to be doing moving forwards, because that's the important thing. Between now and Christmas, there's a whole series of campaigning and actions which will be targeted at different people across the city. It will be delivered with different partners. It's not just the council. So can I just bring in Ruth just to talk very quickly about sort of what the four main pillars of the plan are, and sort of the areas that we're targeting that we know people are going to need help and support. And just to show that we have been listening, there's probably something which is in our campaign plan which is not in our current plan, because one of the things we've picked up, for instance, is that gambling and gambling debt is on the increase. So we're adding that into some of the activities that we're going to do later on the year in the plan. And that's why I said it's dynamic. We're listening to people, finding out what help and support they need, and then trying to find how we can support. Over to you, Ruth.
Thank you so much. I think such a lot's been covered already, as you say, in the meeting so far. So under our plan, there's four main themes to the plan, and then there's an underlying element as well, which is around partnerships, coordination, and communications. And I guess that's one of the most important things to say, is that this is about a citywide partnership. Lots and lots of people, organisations, voluntary and community sector are contributing to this plan, and we'll continue to do so, because as Councillor Dan's just said, this is evolving. It is definitely going to be dynamic and moving forward. So there are the four main themes. One is around offers and discounts. So what are the things that are open to the people of Plymouth that could be accessed? There's been lots of examples already given in Cabinet today around Fun for Free, with a focus then around the summer holidays. We've also heard of Bonfire Night, but there will be a whole range of other things, other discounts that are available across the city that people perhaps don't know about, that we're making sure that we promote on our cost of living hub. So please, if you were to Google or any other search engine, Plymouth cost of living hub, you will find a whole range of information there. The plan itself is there, but also all the links to the individual levels of support that you might be interested in looking at. Making money go further is another whole tranche of the plan. We all know that money's tight, so what can we do to just help that money go a little bit further? It might be about access to good quality financial advice, low cost ways to save money. Perhaps it's about making sure that you're on the best tariff that you possibly can be for your energy usage, all sorts of things like that. And also includes helping people to remain in work, helping people perhaps to get skills, to gain a promotion, but also one of the things we do know is that there are many, many millions of pounds of benefits that go unclaimed in Plymouth, that the population of Plymouth are entitled to access. And so things like a benefits access calculator and all sorts of other support in how you can get help in accessing benefits that you might be entitled to is all on there. Then there is crisis support. So we know that many people are hitting a crisis. If you're in crisis or you're close to crisis, you need help and you need support urgently. Non-judgmental, non-stigmatizing. This is about helping you. You might need food, you might need warm clothes, you might need help with, a fridge is broken and some fundamental thing like that. Or it might be about helping you to consolidate and tackle those debts. There's help in all those sorts of areas, and also mental health support, because just being in a cost of living crisis, having a shortage of money is incredibly stressful, and it really does impact people's mental health as well. So there is the support on there for that as well. So this is about support when people most need it, but then also helping you to get your finances back on track as well and coming out of that crisis. There's a section there on asks for government as well. So we know, and we'll be gathering further information on this, I'm sure, as the months go by, that there are some things that we can't change, that we can't do in Plymouth. We can't necessarily make things happen in the way that we'd like. And they need the government to take action. And so we'll be compiling and generating a list of those and making sure that those asks of government are going forward on all your behalf to make sure that those sorts of things are looked at. So, as I say, this is that the plan covers those elements. And then if you look on our cost of living hub, you will see that all of the links are on there. It's very easy to navigate. You can just click on it and you will see different sections for financial help and advice, help with energy costs, help with food costs, all sorts of things like that. And when you click on those links, you'll find a whole range of support there. We're working with many partners across the city, because it may be that sometimes the accessing the hub isn't necessarily something an individual person might do, although they can, but it may be that somebody comes to you and asks if you know anywhere that someone can get support from. So please, your first thought, the first thing you might reach for should be the cost of living hub, and to take it from there and links into all of those really, really worthwhile things. I think Councillor Dunn said that this is dynamic, and that's absolutely true. It strikes me that today is the first cool day we've had towards the end of this little heat wave that we've experienced, but we already have to be thinking about winter. We have to be thinking about the impact of cold homes on people, and also the way in which many people think about Christmas is a mixture of excitement but also dread, because we all know that it's expensive. So what are the sorts of things that are out there for people? And we'll be hoping to do a bit of a feature around that in one of our communications campaigns as we go forward. So I will leave it there, if that's okay, and hand back to Councillor Dan.
Yes, it's very difficult to know what sort of impact you have, but so just in terms of communication, so that's first of all getting our little leaflet out. They've gone, all of our wellbeing hubs, all our libraries, they're in 60 churches, they're in the job centre, and they've been given to all the PEC advisors. And we also had thousands given out over Fit and Fed. But we've also been doing specific leaflets as well. So we've produced some leaflets for midwives to hand out to families, which highlight support available for families with very young children. So we've shared 1,000 of those with the community midwifery team. Every week on social media, we're highlighting a different theme. So we've started off with getting people to sign up for free school meals if they're entitled to for their children, about the school uniform hubs. And I know that, Sally, would you like to just give a 30-second update? Because when you were doing your attendance thing at Plymouth School the other day, you said that lots of people have referred to the cost of living website, so that's really good.
Well, actually, part of the work that we did with schools and information going out was to produce a booklet which was sent to all schools, which actually includes cost of living information, which is actually on the back page. And that the feedback, and this is sort of informal feedback just of being in at Plymouth School, was that's gone down very well, been very well received. Really useful, because increasingly schools are something like 90% of schools, this isn't just in Plymouth, across the country, are finding that they're having to give support for things like food, advice, school uniform, all of those things. and having that information going out to schools is actually really, really useful. And I was pleased to be one of the first cabinet members to launch the tackling the cost of living and specifically addressing and talking to parents about the issue of making sure that they apply for free school meals. Really important, because that's not just an advantage to make to parents and to children, but is also really important as well as far as pupil premium and the schools are concerned. So really pleased to be able to work together.
So in August alone, there was over 2,000 hits on the cost of living hub. A lot of it, I might like to say, was on the free things to do in Plymouth and to help with food costs. So needless to say, we're updating already with some of the free things to do in half term and leading up to Christmas. But since we started this, we've had 200,000 visits to the website and over 7,000 engagements. So this is what I say. I think this is about the more people who can access the website and share that news, the better. So we've done schools. We're starting doing what you're entitled to make sure that we've shared the benefits check calculator so people can see if they're getting enough money. We're doing Best Start in Life, that's through the community midwives, and we're talking about Sure Start maternity grant and Healthy Start. Then we're starting to look at how people can deal with debt, and it's things like as well warning people about loan sharks so that people don't get into more debt. And I think this is where the gambling feedback came from. We're talking about food on a budget, so it's not just getting free food, it's where you can access food cheaply, how you can cook more effectively and use less energy. We're also looking at mental health support, and this leads into that thing that when you're struggling and you're in crisis, we're trying to make sure people don't feel as though they're on their own, and as like Ruth said, they're not stigmatised, especially for, you know, families who are on low incomes, whose living expenses are just spiralling out of control. And then housing costs. We're hoping to do something in October with the banks, as well as Citizens Advice Bureau, because quite often people are scared to go to the bank when they start getting into financial trouble, and they're in trouble before they get there. And actually the banks this time want to be supportive, they want to support their customers, they don't want people to lose their homes, they want to, you know, help people keep their homes. And we're also looking at finding work. And I think this is one of the examples where I want to just give one example of something that we're doing that I think is going to be quite different to what other cities have done. So we've been working with the Inclusive Economy team through the not Resurgam, Plymouth Charter, sorry. I was thinking, what's it called? It's not Resurgam, Plymouth Charter. So they've got 330 businesses that they work with, and they've got nearly 700 LinkedIn members. So that's their direct link to businesses. So they've already taken on board our Helping Plymouth and our Helping Pay the Cost of Living link and added it to their website. But they've also gone much further than that, because what they have done is that they are looking at their proposition that their employers are having about how they think the cost of living is affecting what they do, because obviously they have so many people working for them. And one of the things they've said is that we must be able to successfully measure and give meaning to why the city should be more inclusive. A fairer city can respond better to the cost of living crisis. So this is the collective impact, making sure that they look after their staff, making sure that they're paying them proper wages, looking at the skills agenda, and also recognising across the city that not everybody's economically active. And if we can encourage more people back to work, then it's going to help individuals with their cost of living. So that is something which has probably not crossed their paths before, in terms of thinking of the cost of living and what they can do, which has a positive impact on their employees. And then we move into half term, and Jemima Lang said earlier, you know, we're having our bonfire night. you know, thousands of kids and families will enjoy that. But of course, then we're coming into winter. So by the end of October, we'll be looking at warm spaces, how we can give people more advice on how to manage their energy costs, and also how to plan for Christmas, because that's going to be a really, really big thing. We've called it, what I can't remember what we called it. I think we called it planning for Christmas, but not being a Scrooge, because families come under a lot of pressure at Christmas. Their children will be asking for things. There'll be fads, and it's an expensive time. And it's also a time when families quite often have to borrow money and get into debt. So we are going to do quite a lot about thrifting and going to charity shops as well. So not just buying everything new, but just thinking about how they can make their money go further. Because what we don't want is after Christmas to have a sudden uplift in people who are presenting in crisis, either at a council or at a library or at citizens' advice in crisis, because we know that debt will increase. And this is why I said it's very difficult to articulate it, but when you look at all the things that we've got planned, the different things we're trying to achieve and the different audiences that we're trying to reach, hopefully by the time we get to Christmas and that first 100 days of this campaign, we'll have some really positive things to say. These are how we've managed to help people, and it will feed into the Child Poverty Action Group and all the work that Councillor Penberthy does about poverty across the city. And that's my lot.
Oh, terrific. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to put a link to all of that in the when we publish the webcast for this meeting, okay? But we'll try and make sure that we get the advertising for those links out in as wide a range of ways as we can.
One thing I forgot to tell you as well is that the comms team are sending a cost of living communications toolkit. So all our partners across the city, so all the people who have taken part of the 80 organisations that came and worked with us in the workshops, are going to have some links so that they can share the same messages and the same contacts, so that we're getting that message out much wider.
Sounds really good. Okay, everybody. Mary.
Sue, can I just check? I mean, I don't know who came to your sessions, but can I just ask to make sure that we let I'm trying to think, improving lives, and also put down no, so that at least we're aiming particularly at those. I don't know if they took part in any of your bits and pieces earlier, so thanks.
They did, and they are, and in fact I've been asked to go to an Improving Lives event. I think it's next month, just to talk about the cost of living crisis, but what the council's doing and how its partners are working together to make sure that we share. I think you'll be there as well.
There we are. By the way, thank you very much indeed to Ruth, who's just gone off camera, for her work all the way through this process as well. And thanks again to all the people who contributed. You said 80 organisations altogether?
There was 80 people at the workshop, but I think
people.
we've got actively, I don't know how many organisations we've got, but the team, for a very small team, have pulled together a massive plan which is sustainable moving forwards as well, which is really important.
Yeah,
so thank you, Ruth.
That's okay, it's well done. If you could pass our thanks on, Ruth, to everybody in the team that contributed. They've done a fine job, really have, and quickly too. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Right. What can I say? I think I can say that I'm going to move on to the next item. That's what I can say. If that's all right. Now, Councillor Lowry is unable to be with us today, but you'll be pleased to know that Councillor Penberthy has agreed to step up and step in to this report along with David. Shall I start with you, Chris, and then we'll see where we go from there?
I think that's probably best, Leader. If you give David the generics and me the specifics, we might struggle, or certainly I might. The medium-term financial plan is often seen as a boring document, and it's not. In fact, on Saturday night, I was enjoying Plymouth Sound from the deck of one of the river cruises with some friends visiting, and I was chatting with one of them about council finances, the struggles we're facing. And someone who was sitting nearby said, "Oh, excuse me earwigging, and started talking about exactly the same issues and their perspectives, and said, I wish there was somewhere where I could see the challenges you were facing in the next few years." And I said, go to the council website, have a look at the cabinet papers for Monday, and have a read of the medium-term financial plan, and you'll see it all there. So, there's not often you get a chance to recommend such a thrilling read. But this is a key financial document. It provides the strategic framework that links our revenue budget, our capital programme, our treasury management strategy, and our capital strategy over the coming 5 years. It gives us the frameworks within which we can begin to plan, despite the caveats of not really knowing what the government's going to be doing tomorrow, let alone next year. The last time, in those days it was called a medium-term financial strategy, was taken to council, was November 2018. The LGA, SIPFA, LGIU, everyone else will tell you that one of these is good practice and that every administration should work on one and deliver one. The last one to do that was a Labour administration under Councillor Lowry's stewardship, and no surprise that Councillor Lowry is stepping up to the plate once again and saying that as a cabinet member for finance, he needs to have a medium-term financial plan approved by cabinet and council so that he can take forward with officers the planning that is necessary. So here we are again. As he states in the report, Mark says that this strategy is key in setting out our financial assumptions as we set about bringing stability to the city's finances whilst maintaining our ambitions. So this medium-term financial plan covers a 5-year period from 2023-24 to 27-28, recognising that this year, the 23-24 year, is already set as an approved budget, and latter years are provided for illustrative purposes only. The strategy sets out the financial principles and objectives whilst working to deliver the priorities of the corporate plan. The report shows a forecasted £11.2 million funding gap for year 24-25, and that needs to be closed as part of the budget process. We need by law to have a balanced budget for consideration at the February council meeting, and I have every confidence that Mark, working with officers and the rest of us, will deliver exactly that. Maybe worryingly, in terms of the medium-term financial plan overall, it identifies that over the 5 years there's a £185 million gap between projected income and expenditure. This isn't unusual. Every council faces it and every council deals with it. But it is a harsh reality that the decisions that have to be made in the next 5 years are to effectively take £185 million worth of spending out of 5 years worth of budget. That's going to mean some tough decisions, and I think it's right that Mark gives us that outline now so that we can take future plans seriously. We all know the issues facing everyone across the country in terms of general inflation, fuel costs, and the cost of living crisis itself. These aren't just things we all experience at home. As a council, we're experiencing the same pressures. Our electricity bills are going up. That's why Tom's busy putting solar panels on car park roofs. It's true that the fuel costs for the fleet are increasing, And it's one of the reasons we're moving to electric vehicles. And the cost of living crisis is impacting on us and our staff and the people who use our services. And at the same time, there are additional pressures on adult social care, children's social care, and helping the homeless to find not only short-term but long-term homes that they can make their own. And those are just a few of our pressure points. We know the additional costs, and David has been very good at doing some forecasting for us. But what we actually don't know is what central government is going to do to deliver the long overdue and promised reform to local government funding. The table in the section on resources shows the current government policy of our funding has moved from central funding via income tax and other tax raising methods to local taxation within the council tax. Those figures switching over the last 5 years from 40% local, 60% national to the other way around. Now you might think, so what? But income tax is a fair tax system. A council tax is a regressive tax where those on low and medium incomes pay more as a proportion of their income than those on high incomes living in expensive houses. So the difference in our council tax is being made up by those who can afford it least, not by a fairer system of taxation. That's not really fair, and certainly not fair to the people of Plymouth. Before we look at additional cost pressures, we do need to right-size the budget, which includes an additional £2.6 million to honour our commitment to pay social care providers the Living Wage Foundation rate recommended pay rather than the national minimum wage living wage rate of pay. It's very confusing when a chancellor calls something that's already in existence the same as something else. So anyway, that's £2.6 million to make sure that we give people the pay they need to deliver our services that actually meets the costs of living, not extravagantly, but just a basic lifestyle. We've also got £1.5 million of one-off allocations used to balance the current year's budget, which need to be covered. The key funding assumptions are set out in the report, and all decisions on each year's budget are subject to scrutiny and approval by full council, not as a result of this report itself. So what are we doing to balance the financial books? As I've already said, the plan highlights a budget shortfall of 11.2 million in 2023-24, rising without any mitigations being taken to 24.5 million by 27-28. So we need to provide services in new ways, joining up with partners wherever possible, investing in ways of doing things more efficiently, making the most of our assets, raising income by taking a more commercial approach, and a focus and clarity on our organisational purpose. We'll focus on reforms to Children's Directorate, such as supporting children, young people and families through locality-based early help services that meet their needs without the needs for statutory social work intervention, and helping partners to provide help and support for families at the earliest point of need at the lowest point of intervention. And we will be looking at how we reform meeting the council's statutory requirements for home to school transport that meet children's needs as cost effectively as possible. The Place Directorate will continue to prioritise growth and ensure the delivery of frontline services to meet the needs of residents across the city by maximising income. In the People Directorate, the Community Connections Department is continuing to work on reducing demand for homelessness services through early intervention and prevention, including ensuring assessment processes are robust. Work is also ongoing to increase access to alternative provision to help reduce reliance on high-cost nightly paid accommodation and supporting delivery of increased affordable provision to support move on from temporary accommodation. Hasten to say, as we look at the impact of homelessness services, we are also now looking at the impact on people's lives and whether there are early intervention steps that can be taken there in order to stop people needing services that they're not currently accessing in the council. And Jemima and I have already been talking, following some research done by Jackie King, about the impact of children living in bed and breakfast, the reasons they're there, and what we might be able to do to intervene on low levels to stop access to CAMS or other social service needs. So we're looking really carefully in the round at how we tackle these problems together. The Adult Social Care and Strategic Commissioning Department, for example, are working closely with system partners, increasing the focus on improving access to healthcare and outcomes for those leaving hospital. In the transformation portfolio and customer support services, as well as playing a key role in supporting the demand-led services with financial, legal, procurement and HR expertise, are also reviewing their own operating models. So this isn't a let's do a quick fix somewhere. This is an ongoing systematic approach to how we continually improve the way we work as a council to ensure that we deliver well for people. And we do that knowing where we might be over the next 5 years, something that sadly wasn't left in place for us at the point that we took control in May. So this isn't a replacement to the annual budget setting process, as all of us know, but it does supplement it, and it helps us make the decisions this year because we have some idea of where we're going in the following 4. Leader, earlier on I said that this was about ambition, and I've talked a lot about revenue programme. I want to assure you that Councillor Lowry has in this plan a very clear ambition for a capital programme which remains at £556.7 million during the plan period, us investing in transforming Plymouth and making Plymouth a really brilliant place to be. So it's not all doom and gloom. We are fixing things and we are going to be ambitious and continue to deliver for Plymouth. We can do that because of the framework set out in this strategy. I'd like to thank Mark in his absence for the work he did, but also I know David and the teams across the council have been working with all of us to make this happen. I'm sure David can do the technical stuff that underpins it, because that's the end of my notes, so please don't ask me anything more complicated.
We'll save that for David, I think, Chris. Well, it depends how the next few minutes goes, really, as to whether that does happen. Anyway, David, welcome. Nice holiday.
Thank you.
In there.
Sorry, say again, I missed that, but
I said it was a nice holiday you seem to be having there with your background.
yes, well, it all ties into the previous items on the agenda, doesn't it? So
Yeah,
we all do work together, Leader.
Yeah.
So, oh, can I just come in and supplement a few
Anything
things?
to supplement Councillor Penberthy's introduction?
Yeah, of course. And first of all, on behalf of Councillor Lowry, who's sunning himself in Portugal, I believe, he's probably looking over his shoulder, Councillor Penberthy, at the way that you summed that up. So he needs to be careful, doesn't he? Just in terms of where we are on this one, I think Councillor Penberthy has made it extremely clear. So this is not a budget report. It's not a decision-making report. It sets out the context of where we find ourselves as we start thinking about 24, 25 and the years going forward from there. So that's very clear. So this is, hopefully it's an easy read, Leader. I've tried to streamline it down a little bit from what we had previously and make it a bit more punchy, but it's trying to be all things to all men, I think. So it's a financial strategy, and as much as it sets out the context and what the government are doing and not doing, and the financial principles and objectives that Plymouth City Council have set themselves. It's a forecast as much as it then takes that information and puts it into some very nice tables. I always like a nice table in my reports that show how the numbers come together. And again, as has been pointed out, that sort of pinpoints the £11.2 million funding gap that we could be facing for next year, rising up to 24.5 million over the 5 years. And then it's a financial plan, and as much as it tries to set out and say, again, as Councillor Penberthy summed up at the end, the actions that all the directorates are taking in order to work to close that gap. So it's right that we have this in place. I made a commitment at audit and governance and also at the budget scrutiny last year, where a recommendation came forward that we should have a medium-term financial strategy. We now have one that takes us out to 27-28. There's always a caveat to any financial information, leader, and that is when we get up to 27-28, I will guarantee the numbers will look different to what they look in this report. But that's all I'd like to add for a second. So if there's any questions, be happy to try and answer them.
Oh, that's lovely, David. Thank you very much indeed. Members, do you have any questions for David at all? It is good to have this back on the agenda, David, because, you know, it was a long time since the last one. So can we make sure there needs to be something where there's a trigger for refreshing this?
Yeah.
And would your view be updating the plans stroke strategy every year, or would you give it 3 years and then do it? How would you proceed?
Leader, my view would be that the next process, now that we've got this on the table, is we set a formal 24-25 budget, and sort of mid-term again, we should then take the experience and the numbers that we put together and build those in, because as I said, the numbers will be changing. So it should be much more of a dynamic document that we use, rather than sort of waiting 3 or 4 years when all the information has moved on.
Leaving it on the shelf to be forgotten about and
Yeah.
a reminder being left on the shelf. Okay, so we'll make that so. We'll get it into our annual calendar of things to do about this time of the year then, which is good. I mean, obviously the plan itself, in terms of the ambition and the sense of direction and the policies and that, will stay pretty much the same. What really will change will be the financial information. And any changes that we might have to tweak in the light of that financial information, I guess. As you say, a much more dynamic document than maybe we've had before. Okay, sorry, Sudan, yes.
It's a statement, I think, more than a question, about a little bit about narrative. So, you know, being politicians, we all go around talking to our residents, and every single year our residents will say, why is it I can't do this? Because I always pay my council tax. But actually this graph of revenue resources clearly explains why it is so difficult, because the amount of council tax has gone up and up and up, so we're squeezing the money, as Councillor Penberthy said, but the amount of revenue support grant has drastically come down, and that's why the services that we deliver are just so much more difficult to deliver, because we're trying to deliver the same services with less money. And I just don't know whether that narrative comes out strongly enough. I mean, it is a political narrative, but you cannot deny 10 years of austerity, 10 years of fund. Well, I'm just going on this graph, just this one graph, Jemima, because this is the one that's in here. You can just see how much money has been taken from local authorities and how we have to struggle to manage our budgets. So I don't know whether that's a narrative we can somehow get in there, just so that that person that Councillor Penberthy was talking about, who wants to know about the pressures on local authorities, why are you in this position? Why are other authorities around the country really, really struggling? and stopping delivering non-statutory services like closing libraries and not doing things in parks. We're still doing that, but it's tough, and I'm not sure that that message is clear enough as a narrative for that person who wants to look at the plan, or whether this is the right place to have it. But it is something I think we need to share.
I think you're right that it needs explaining. I think it's good to see in this document that graph, and it is good to see the other graphs, not because they're pleasant reading. It's actually for the opposite reason, but it does explain context. What has been interesting over the last couple of weeks with the Birmingham thing and others is national media have started printing stories about how local government funding's been cut for the first time probably in a very, very, very long time. So, you know, I think more people are going to hear about this because there's more councils that are in a bit, they're in trouble. Part of the problem is, for councils like us and every other council, is that when you cut on the scale that's been cut, and don't forget, we're the part of the public sector that's had the deepest, most savage cuts, is that the headroom that we used to have, we used to have we used to call it rainy day money. That's what we used to call it. It was for exceptional problems. But now it's relentless. It's raining every blooming day. And, you know, we haven't got that headroom to deal with some of the shocks to the system that keep getting visited upon us. So, you know, it is, any context is good. I mean, David, you're in touch with, you know, unitary treasurers through your membership of the Unitary Treasurers Organisation. I presume they're all having graphs like this in their financial papers as well.
Yes, so if we were outliers, leader, and sort of having difficulties ourselves, I would be more concerned than I am at the moment, because it is national issues. And I think you're absolutely right to say that finally the press is picking up on it, which is making the politicians listen a bit more. So, for instance, we've lobbied from Plymouth for many years about the absence of correct funding for children's social care. That is now starting to come up on national issues as being its adults and its children's. And then the other item that's now coming to the fore is about funding required for homelessness. So those issues are across the country, and I work very hard with the other unitary treasurers and also with Segoma to make sure that our voice is heard. And I should be joining a meeting this week with some colleagues from DLUC, where they particularly want to understand, as they say, what's happening on the ground. So always take those opportunities to get local issues across and to make the numbers more real, if that helps.
I wasn't going to say anything, but actually, as the issue of the children's social care budgets has come up, as it in Chris's presentation and in what you've said, David, I think it's really important, again, building on what Sue said, that actually, if you're not a person whose family has rubbed up against the social care system, you might not know how much of the council's budget has to go on looking after the most vulnerable people in our city, our children who need our care and our support. And I think, building on what you said, David, I think there really is a national conversation to be had about how much this costs, how much funding we get for it, what individual placements cost for certain children who need really complex care. It's a service that we have to provide, we want to provide, but actually some of these costs are becoming so high that it isn't an issue that individual councils can sort out alone. We have to have a national conversation about this, because, as I say, speaking to people on the doorstep, if you haven't had reason to interact with children's social care, it won't be something that you know about. You think about your council tax going on potholes, grass cutting, you know, the things, bins, the things that people talk to us about all the time. So I am going to talk about this in scrutiny tomorrow, but this is another opportunity to say, you know, the more I think about this, and having been back in this cabinet role now since May, it's not something that we as local authorities, individual local authorities, can solve. We can't. The government had it all laid out in Josh McAllister's report. They know the situation, and we need some government intervention around what this is costing councils, because we have to do the best for these children and young people. I'm absolutely unwavering in that, but the costs are just rising all the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jemima. Okay, well, first of all, David, can I add my thanks to you and to Councillor Lowry for all the, no doubt, hours of our work gone into this. But it's great to have this in front of us again. You know, it's something that we can't and shouldn't do without. And it does also help us to answer a few questions about, you know, what's happening to us. You know, a lot of the media stuff is really, you know, they have a casual acquaintance with the details on finance, and that's an understandable thing. But what we do in this report, I think, is lay out the context that for so many times is missing from the discourses we have about the performance of councils. So it's really important. There's a piece today by Sir Steve Houghton, who's our Segoma leader, who's the leader of Barnsley, who talks quite a bit about things that need doing and things that could fix things straight away. And he's got a list of 10 things. And number one on his list of things is restoring the distribution of money on the basis of deprivation, which was a very early change that the Conservative government made back in 2010, and robbed a lot of local authorities of money that they were using to eliminate things like poverty or to deal with the consequences of deprivation. So I'm sure we'll have a bit more discourse on this over the next few months as we approach a general election, talk about priorities. But thank you, David. So I've got today now to actually get you to vote. I mean, I let you off the last meeting, the last item, because actually you should have noted that. Okay, so I'll come back to that in a minute. But on this recommendation, could you please agree the recommendation that we send this now to the council for them to recommend it, to agree it at the next council meeting? Is that agreed? Marvellous. And if I could sneak back in with the recommendation for the cost of living action plan, which is that we note the report. Duly noted. Thank you, Jamie. I'm sure you can make that adjustment. David, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon. Okay, so I'll move on now to the next item on the agenda, which is the last item on today's agenda, I think, called Unlocking Plymouth's Potential 23 to 25. Councillor Cresswell and David and Tina. Who's on? Join me, Tina, there you are.
I'm online.
You snuck out, I thought you snuck in, but there you are. Okay, so over to you to introduce Sally, please.
I'm delighted to be able to present to you all today Unlocking Plymouth's Potential, our new Seeking Education, Employment or Training, SEAT strategy, and again approval to implement this much needed plan. Most young people actually succeed in education. They make a positive transition to adult life and the world of work. However, in our city, 1 in 10 young people do not, and this number is unacceptably high. In response, we have developed the city's first strategic plan committed to reducing high levels of young people not in employment, education or training, NEET, or where their employment, education or training status is not known. Spending time as NEET can be detrimental to both physical and mental health, and potentially leads to unemployment, low pay, low quality work in later life, and less feelings of success. The plan recognises that priority groups of young people will require some additional support and that no single agency can address NEET or youth employment challenges in Plymouth entirely on their own. This is due to the range of factors that resulted in young persons' ability to engage with education, employment or training. Successful engagement and integration into the labour market alongside educational and training requires strong multi-agency partnership at both a strategic and operational level, delivering early interventions. Some of these young people will require extensive support with focused, personalised action plans to transition them from being NEET into employment, education or training. This groundbreaking plan supports the future of Plymouth's young people to enable them to move confidently into becoming seeking employment, education and training, which is SEET, to see that they successfully transition into adulthood. Now, we all recognise the term NEET itself. It's actually a very unhelpful term. It encourages interventions to focus on the symptom rather than the cause of disengagement. Transforming our language and using the terminology SEET externally to employers, educators and trainers, providers as young people seek employment, education or training ensures that our interventions focus on actions and support. This will ultimately lead to enabling our young people to start on the path to financial independence through employment or business startups. And I do go back to the language because language really does matter. And it's really important that we sort of tie that in to our whole strategy, and we are a trauma-informed council, and using the term SEET is so much more positive. The plan sets out critical issues to be addressed by Plymouth City Council and key partners. It's a very ambitious plan to improve high-quality opportunities for all of our young people, so they're confident about their future and successfully transition into adulthood and beyond. It enables us to work collectively across the system and to transform our services into a preventable model through early identification of those young people at risk of becoming NEET, along with early interventions and the creations of new innovative opportunities. The plan has been circulated widely through the diverse membership of the Employment and Skills Board, key stakeholders with schools and colleges. The consultation process, along with wider stakeholder engagement, has greatly shaped the priorities and interventions going forward. This is an exciting and transformative plan, particularly focused on young people from vulnerable and disadvantaged backgrounds. I present this plan to secure your support today and to implement it to make a positive impact, ensuring that every child and young person in our city has the opportunity and the support they need to succeed in their chosen career and adult path. And just as a sort of an aside, in July 2023, 5,643 year 12 and 13 pupils. We have 311 NEET, 5.5%, and 124, that's 2.2, where the situation is not known. But of those 311 NEET young people transitioned being SEET, 6 of these young people have actually just now confirmed start-up dates for employment and training. So we are definitely moving in the right direction. More to do, but I am really, really keen to share this with you. It's something I feel deeply committed about. Thank you.
That's lovely, Sally. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Tina next, if that's okay, and then David. Is that all right? Is that the order of batting that you were expecting? Tina?
Thank you, Leader. I think Sally's introduced it beautifully. I think what the plan really gives us an opportunity to do is move into a preventative model. I think we recognise that we could identify probably 80% of our young people at risk of becoming NEET, and if we can support them early, we can actually move into a preventative model, while at the same time we recognise we've got quite a large cohort of young people not in employment and education. So 1 in 10 young people, is high, but actually that's not our mainstream students. So when you look at those SEND young people, actually 1 in 2 young people are in education, and predominantly they're in educational training, and very few make it into employment. And when you look at our care leavers, it's only 1 in 5 young people make it into employment. So what we recognise is absolutely key is creating opportunities, and we've been working really hard to create opportunities. And last September, we had 9 supported internships in the city. Today, we're sat with 49 supported internships. And we're working really hard to grow the opportunities. We're creating really innovative solutions, and we're creating really innovative programs. We've just done a pilot for a Your Futures program through Encore Southwest, our adult education provider, with just 4 young people. It was really intensive support. These young people need extensive personalised action plans and extensive support. But all 4 of those following a 5-week program, which was a full-time program and included a residential. They all had a EHCP, so they all SEND young people. All 4 of them now have transitioned into employment, education and training. So, we know it works. We know it's going to be really focused. And it's the reason we're using the terminology seeking is really around that support needed to shift people from not in employment into seeking. There's extensive support required, and once we get them into the seeking phase, it's a relatively quick transition then into employment, education and training.
Thank you, Tina. David, anything you wish to add?
Well, just a couple of points. I mean, it is a thorough report that you've got in front of you, and a really comprehensive strategy. One of the positive elements of the strategy is that it does focus specifically on individual vulnerable groups. And as Tina has said, that is really important, that we're not just having a broad brushstroke here. We know the groups of young people that find it most difficult to get into employment, education and training, and we're really focusing this strategy on them. It has to be whole system wide, so we need to look at the whole system, all of the partnerships across the city. This is something that the council really relies on its partners, our employers, all of our organisations to really be helping get young people into those training opportunities, into those apprenticeships, into those employments, and really helping them to give them their first steps. So, I think there's a reference here into the system, into the partnership, but that's something that we all need to really at a strategic level be prioritising in order to make this strategy become reality across the city. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any comments or questions from members? Sue?
It's a question about our partners, really. So in the welfare to work world, are there any specific contracts that support specifically young people into employment and training? And if there isn't, can we lobby so that, through DWP, we might be able to influence what sort of welfare to work contracts are in the city to help support? Because quite often the young people will need extra mentoring support or training support for a longer period of time, which costs money and doesn't always fit in with the normal skills provision.
Tina, to come on that one.
Yeah. So, there are a number of elements across the city, and we do work collectively with DWP. DWP are embedded into this contract, and what we're doing is we're working across the system. So we recognise the offer is in silos. So across our partnership, there's over 80 partners in the mix. And that's like Young Devon, DWP. We've got the Youth Hub, which is funded through DWP. So the short answer is yes, but it's quite complex because it's across multi-partners and multi-agencies. So through Skills Launchpad, what we're doing is we're doing a triage in support. So a young person will come in and register with us, and we hide the wiring so it's seamless, and we can direct them to the right access, the right support. So whether that's for mental health services, whether that's for benefits, whether that's for other support, and that's before we're even looking at employability support. So we function as a triage. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Lovely. I mean, what is exciting as well about this report is it does lay out exactly how many opportunities are around in the town at the moment, right? I mean, there's quite a lot going on, isn't there? And likely to be. So it isn't the availability of opportunities so much as the ability of us to get the young people to see that they got a future and it's worth the effort. But there are, a few people in here that I mean, for example, the young carers, for example. I mean, we talk about making sure that they're okay, but I mean, what practically can we do when there's so much of what you might call support services that we might have been able to put in, we're no longer able to do in sufficient amount, for example. So, I mean, are we going to have programs for them?
Yeah, so we're looking at working with employers to provide supported work opportunities, whether that's paid or unpaid. And we also recognise, for example, we have 2,500 apprenticeships across the city, but we've only got 2 supported apprenticeships. So what we're doing is we want to work with young people and their parents first and foremost to disclose that it's okay to disclose that you're a SEND. And if you go into an apprenticeship, because we believe there's many people on an apprenticeship who should be on a supported apprenticeship, they get the additional support they need, and training providers can draw down additional money to provide that support. We're growing our supported internships and we're growing our pathways, but equally we're also, through our adult education budget, rolling out a programme to managers and leaders within organisations who are looking to offer these opportunities for young people from a more complex background. So we're working to provide training and support, and we're also looking to create new, really innovative pathways. And we're also asking everyone to question if they can provide opportunities.
I suppose the obvious question is, given the number of apprenticeships, and you say in the report that we're above average in terms of, as a city, for the number of apprenticeships that we have, there are only, you said, 2 supported apprenticeships.
Yeah.
I suppose they're the council, are they, those 2?
They No, I don't think they are. I think they're with Green Light, but I will check that. But I know when I've looked at the figures, there's just 2 apprenticeships, and I think the problem is around young people and parents not wanting to disclose their young people as SEND. But it's really key that we do, and employers always ask the question, and training providers always ask the question, and it's so important because, like I say, those young people can access additional training, and the training providers can access additional funding to provide that additional support those young people need in the workplace. So I think there's something around unconscious bias around being young people disclosing that they need additional support in the workplace.
But there's also something about us, if you wouldn't mind, not pushing that hard enough, and it's going to be really difficult to get partners to come up to the mark if we ourselves are not providing. So I think there's a takeaway from here straight away, if I could say, that we need to sort that out, and we also need to find a way of having that conversation with parents about that, and making it not an exceptional thing to be able to do, but a confidential thing that they can share, and they need to be assured. I mean, again, that we have, all our employment interviews are confidential. They're not something that we broadcast to the public anyway. So it may be some lack of understanding amongst parents about what it is we do when we do that. Not that we do it, it's quite clear that we don't. But we will have to, and we'll have to develop some policy and procedures in this space pretty damn quick if we're not gonna get called out the minute we launch the policy. Okay, any other questions at all? Yes, please.
It's not a question. I wanted to say around the use of language, and I just wanted to back up what Sally says, because I do think it's important, not that the young people would even refer to themselves as NEET or SEED, whatever, but people talking about them and plans to support them and what we can do to be really proactive in this space. It is much better. I know NEET is a a term that has to be used in terms of the data we supply, and it's a government term. But actually, for us, talking about seeking is just so much more active and proactive, and I think we should all be really proactive ourselves in using it when and where we can. And that's how things change. It seems like a little thing, but I think it's a really important thing, and I'm really glad that you've adopted that terminology.
Smashing. Okay, before I ask the Cabinet to vote on the recommendation, Sally, is there anything else that you'd like to say?
I think I'd like to come back to a couple of things. One is I'd really like to endorse what Jemima's just said. Language really matters. It really, really is important. And it's important that we are actually leading by example as well. And I think that's very, very important. But also at the same time, it is quite likely that a number of those young people are unhappy. There is perhaps an unhappiness or unwillingness to actually disclose about having certain special educational needs or whatever those special needs might be. And perhaps we need to make sure that we are being much more in the same way. If you apply for a job, any sort of job anyway, you are asked to fill in your application or whatever. There is nothing. It's completely right that those things go down, and people shouldn't feel any kind of like bias or whatever. And perhaps we need to be just much more proactive. Perhaps we need to be more proactive in when young people are applying. But very much endorse what Jemima said about language.
Well, my pleasant duty is to invite you to approve this plan. This doesn't have to go to council. We can approve this here now. So it's a matter that's delegated to us. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's carried. Now, in terms of the actions that come out of this immediately, although not subject to a recommendation, I'd like it minuted that we need to see more action from the council to provide supported placements or apprenticeships than has been the case hitherto. Yes. Okay, good. Right, well, I think that's the end of the meeting. In which case, can I thank everybody who's participated, either here or online, and also for the wonderful people who organise these meetings. So they're so beautifully and smoothly put together. Thanks very much for your time. We'll see you next time we meet.
Thank you.